Okay. Let's try this again. See if it actually works this time. Excellent connection. Livestream set up. Hey, there we go. We've got some actual people showing up. Now we're talking. Let me just change the thumbnail here. Hello, hello. That was so weird. Did you guys actually see that there was a previous live stream at all? Like, I had a scheduled live stream and it started and there was just nobody. Like, one person watched. I felt so alone. I had one shadowy viewer as Modius logged in for me, all to himself. Hello, Lysander, Solomon, Olivia, Kakastuk, Theo, Zinzu, Adrianeth, MC, Michael, Joseph, Moonring. How is everybody? My April Fool's was very uneventful. You just got a bloop on your phone right now. Thank you. The only one that popped up. That is so weird. You saw nothing and you were there waiting. Wow. Hey, Emil. A whole video on the Aberration. Okay. Hey, Sam. Yo, what to do? The present topic. So what I was just talking about, which nobody will ever see, is that I'm studying the Elves right now because I am going to be working on some Elven videos this month, finally. Not Elven pantheons and stuff, because that comes a little bit later. Because first I thought, okay, I need a couple of videos on where the Seldrain come from and where Lolth came from and stuff. But it's important to note that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years on the world of Faerun, the Elves did not worship the Seldrain. They worshipped the Fae powers. And the most important and first Elven civilization on Toril actually worshipped Gonadau before they worshipped any of the Elven pantheon. So that was very interesting. And the city of Atornash was incredibly important during the years of the war between the dragons and the giants, the summoning of the Quattle to Chult and the southern region, and the oppression of the Yuan-ti. The fact that the Quattle and the Yuan-ti basically spelled the doom of the Yuan-ti. That probably involved the Nagas and stuff as well. So the southern area of the continent, supercontinent of Faerun, back as it was back in those days, before the Sundering, was all Dark Elves and all their machinations, and the city of Atornash was this dark bastion of power and slavery and all sorts of stuff going on. So the Dark Elves were really, really interesting. And they saw the war between the giants and the dragons, the 1,000 Years War, and all of this stuff was going on. And they were almost like the Yugoloths of the world of Toril, manipulating, subservient to the dragons, and yet manipulating everything that was going on. And when the Gold Elves arrived and started racking up the Green Elves up in the northern areas, the conflict was definitely absolutely going to happen between those two factions. So yeah, really interesting. So I'm finally delving into Elven lore, and it's great, but it's very intense because I want to get everything absolutely right. So I'm going through and rereading the first 3 pages of the Grand History of the Realms over and over and over again, and making notes and making maps and stuff. So I'm actually editing maps and things so I can draw what happened in the Sundering and stuff like that. So, whew, It's gonna be fun. Happy Easter to everybody. Still not as bad as the Warhammer 40k elves. Yeah. Why is it always elves, man? Why do we always blame it on the elves? Why do elves always have this this legacy of blame? Hey Kevin, first time you've seen it live. Nice. Hey Scorch. You've been catching up on Warhammer lore, not as bad as all that. Yeah, the main problem is elven high magic, right? So the elves, the original elves, the green elves, were summoned to the dark elves and the green elves were summoned to the world of Tyrell by the Fey powers to deal with giants and dragons, basically stomping around and starting to destroy the old forests. And the old forests on the supercontinent of Faerun were incredibly powerful with primal energy. So Fey Lords could step through and count as their domain areas of this untapped wilderness. And so when they brought over the Green Elves, they basically just felt right at home. It wasn't really that different from the Feywild for them, and they still worshipped the Fey powers, Fey Lords essentially, and they considered the Feywild to be the world of fairy, where they came from. The Gold Elves and the Silver Elves, which became the Sun and Moon Elves of Tyrell. The Moon Elves are now the most dominant, basically most common elves that you would encounter on the world of Tyrell, but for a long time they weren't the most common. They were descendants of the Eladrin, who were from the upper realms. So we're talking like Arvandor, Olympia, and the other planes of existence. So they were not just Feywild; they were a little bit like divine and snooty, right? So they are the high elves, high as in upper planes high. So it's very interesting that there's a lot more going on with the elves than 5th edition will tell you, and it's like what they don't tell you about the elves could fill several hours worth of videos, which is what I'm going to be bringing to everybody. So it's high magic. So the high magic is capable of performing feats that even the gods can't do. So this is the sort of stuff that the elves, when they gather up 100 elves who all have a predisposition towards being able to do this, because they are so much magic is coursing through them that they have to have direct ancestry of the Fey realms that can carry like this magical load that they're going to be carrying. They are not actually casting spells in the normal traditional arcane way. It's a combination of every kind of magic you can imagine. So it's bardic, it's psychic, it's planar, it's divine, and it's also just channeling primal power from forests and planets and things like that. So when they got 100 of them together and started singing, they literally transported and transposed a part of an outer realm, an upper plane, to the world of Tyrell and changed its timeline. And it's like humans think that they ripped a chunk of the planet off, and that would be where the Shining Sea now is, and that became an island out in the Trackless Sea. But what actually happened is the elves just transposed one plane with another and changed the face of Tyrell, so it became no longer the planet that it was. It became a new planet, and a lot of species got stranded in a different reality, like the Lachey, for instance, got stranded in a different reality, you could say. So it's really interesting, like what exactly was the Sundering, because it wasn't just terraforming, it was some sort of temporal and spatial magic that just even the gods can't do. Just shift a planet to another plane of existence, you know. So the elves with high magic can do things that that scare the gods a little bit, way beyond anything that the dragons and the giants could do at the time, and that was because of, that's the Fey powers, and they brought over this species that could do such a thing, the species of magic. So the Fey are a magical folk, The Telthadur down in the Furbolg, maybe. Well, that would, yeah, it would correlate pretty well with their fighting against the dragons and stuff. Well, fighting against the giants. So yeah, the Green Elves dealt mostly with with the giants because they were in the northern regions. It's like a lot more central than like around the Moonsea and stuff was the upper north. Beyond that was all giant territory. But the great forests that existed then have been split up, shattered really into different forests that there exist now. So during the video, I'll be talking about the Shire and Chondlewood and High Forest and stuff like that. But back in those days, they were in different positions, you know, and some of these forests that are now scattered were all together at the time. So it's going to be tricky pointing out exactly on the map where everything was happening because it will seem like they're more scattered than they were. But it's just the first chunk of the video. After the sun ring, everything gets back to normal. Nobody would believe it was the halflings all along. Yeah, we don't even really know exactly when the halflings arrived on Toril. I'm sure I'll find out. I know exactly when the dwarves showed up. They could have always been there for all we know, but they were just underneath the surface. But when they showed up on the surface world, it has a certain time. Sorry if you can hear machine noises outside. There's some harvesting going on, or fertilizing, or whatever they're doing next door. Orchards, man, they're always busy. What am I drinking? This is just orange juice. It's just, we call it Raro. It's a sachet of juice. Normally I'd be drinking coffee, but not right now. Hey, Aaron Big. Just a reminder to everybody, this is a monetized live chat. If anybody wants to make any donations to the cause, greatly appreciated. It's not too busy in here at the moment. There's, 70 odd people. So I can keep track of what everybody's saying. If anybody has any questions about anything non-Elvish, I'm more than open to any questions you have about D&D. Why did the evil gods try to kill them all if they can do things that even they can't do? Well, because they scared them quite a bit. Also, the gods just weren't as active around these times. They were kind of self-involved with their own wars and things. We also had Anam Allfather stomping around, and the dragon gods were also stomping around. This is when Bahamut and Tiamat became very interested in the world of Toril. And they were just relatively minor draconic gods. They only became of much importance to Toril because that was where they chose to have their tiff between each other, their sibling rivalry. Thanks, C.R. Smith. Half elves even have souls. Yeah, they do. The elf who first suggested they try high magic was actually 3 hin in a robe. Nice. Also, good use of the halflings, name of the halfling species. Hey, Green Scythe. Hey, DeForest. Have you ever did a game with firearms? Yep, absolutely. Dragons do like shiny things, it's true. Hey, Lucian. Kirk, I have no idea what you're talking about. Beelzebul. Is Beelzebul even on my list? I think so. Pop it on there again. This falls under the category of a lot of times I do videos for the request list, but the Elven videos Elven history videos and things, that's just me, man. That's all me. Because I'm studying the Forgotten Realms. That is what I do. Hey Kakastu, thank you. Decided to add giants into my homebrew, and like the drow have ties. If I didn't want to completely copy Toril lore, what's a good alternate story to use? Wow. If the Dark Elves had a tie to the giants more than the dragons, that would be an interesting and different take on things, because I don't know if the Dark Elves were entirely like... I think they were influenced quite a bit by living among the dragons. What if they were living among the giants instead? Would they be a more subservient species at the time? Could they have even worshipped a different god of the Seldrine? Say, like, what if their main deity was Illustrae or Veyron instead of Lolth, and Lolth just got banished and became a demon and never became the goddess of the Drow elves? What if the Drow never actually descended into the Underdark? So these are interesting takes on things. What if they were more like Alpine-dwelling Goliath? So they were a species of dark-skinned giant elves that were part giant. Very interesting take. Giant elves. Wow. So what if the Firbolg, for instance, or the Twisted Giants, of the Fey realm. Yeah. Oh, giant hin. Giant elves. Giant halflings. What's a giant halfling? It's a human. Hey Drew, thank you. Love the videos, AJ, and they're really helping my monthly gaming. Excellent. That's what I'm here for. Question, what are we blaming on the elves? Well, the shattering of the planet of Toril, and shifting it to another plane of existence. For one. The madness, the knife ears, the madness they inflicted on the dragons, for instance, that was not the Dark Elves doing. So the Dark Elves, the Drow, are actually blameless. As far as the dragons are concerned, the Dark Elves did nothing wrong, and have been victimized by the other elves of Toril. Of course, the Drow refer to the other elves, the surface elves, as the fairy elves, the Fey elves. So they blamed them, the gold elves that came over from under their own accord. See, the dark elves and the green elves, which became the wood elves, were brought over specifically by the Fey powers to the world of Toril to save it, essentially, to do their thing. And the gold elves and the silver elves arrived from Tintagel, from the Fey realm, which they had kind of destroyed trying to do the sundering there. And then when they arrived on Toril a few centuries later, they did the exact same bloody thing and caused mass death of the Dark Elves and Green Elves. They caused mass death and destruction. And yeah, they've never been held to account for the genocide, nor have they been held to account for the madness they inflicted on the dragons for this entire time, which has only just sort of ended. So we're now entering the age in Toril, which is... Anam has come back and said, screw the ordering, you guys are on your own. I'm never coming back. Sort it out amongst yourselves. I don't care about your divine order anymore. So the ordering is broken, which means that giants are no longer automatically subservient to bigger giants, and they're just sort of starting to wrap their head around this. And the fire giants are particularly seizing on this idea and going, oh, you know what? Let's just reconstruct Von and Dodd and kick off the war between the dragons and the giants again, because the dragons are now weak. Also, the fire giants have been doing most of their stuff off Toril and different planes of existence, and now they're like tooting the war horn and starting to mobilize their forces. And the innocent humanoids of Toril have no idea what's about to hit them. Not only that, but they're 60 years delayed for a horde of orcs from the north, which have been kind of settled by having a lot more food and being a lot more suppressed by some activities of specific dragons up in the far north, and also some politics, including the legacy of Obold Many Arrows and that sort of unification and stuff, and the sort of peacenik orcs are going, don't raid, we don't need to, we've got food and stuff, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're just going to go flooding out of the north and trample over everything yet again. At the same time, the dragons have now come out of their Draco Rage mythal, which was inflicted on by the Elves for many, many, many years, and now Samaster, the Archmage, broke that, and now the dragons are starting to mobilize and get together, and so it's like, you know what? There's no giants around. We can just take over the continent again, and so things are on the razor's edge of boiling over into a conflict that we have not seen for 20,000 years on the world of Toril. Fomorians, yeah. Tall fellows, huh? Draconic dwarves, perhaps. Nice. One of the interesting things about dwarves is they don't generally crossbreed because of the influence of the dwarven pantheon. They just basically go, nah, we're just going to make you more fertile or sterile when it comes to that, so we don't bless this union, or we do bless this one. So, yeah. Kitty Bree is doing well. She is absolutely fantastic. Jumping around like a... she's full of beans. She's outside at the moment. Dice don't lie. Yes, I play Heroes Unlimited when I'm playing superhero games generally. I also play Mutants and Masterminds, but Heroes Unlimited has been my go-to for many a year. I've got the books, Palladium books, somewhere on the background here. Oh, there's one. Play a lot of Supers games. Also, another one of my favourite games is Traveller. I've been playing Traveller as long as I've been playing D&D. Although I haven't really been playing Traveller for years and years and years. Toril needs a perennial white snake. White strake? What? No, Nikolai, I'm not done covering the planner races. I've got to cover the Bladelings and all sorts of other ones. No, I haven't. There's been developments in Traveller that I haven't really played for a long time. Actually, hey Racklin. Traveller is interesting because it's got, like, if you're interested in playing like dog folk in D&D, Traveller's got a lot of animal folk. It's got like Aslan, and it's got Vagra, who are like basically cat people and dog people. So yeah, you can play that. Hey, the Ascendant. In the soul trade, do certain races have greater or lesser value depending on their faith and alignment? Generally speaking, good souls are more valuable. And higher level, so more experienced and more influential souls are more valuable. So longer lived races like dwarves and elves can, in theory, experience more life, and therefore their souls are generally more valuable. But humans are an unknown quantity. They can be very, very powerful souls. Or not. Hey, thanks, Death Scythe. Look at all those books. Really, this is a modest collection of books. I could easily have double this amount of books and still miss certain things. Hey, Gino X 1987. Is it possible in D&D to make your character a chaotic good beholder disguised as a mage to surprise other players? Yes. In fact, I ran a campaign not so long ago couple of years, that was a slard, a green slard, that was polymorphed into basically a barbarian, a dragonborn barbarian. And he masqueraded so effectively as a dragonborn barbarian that none of the other players at the table actually knew what was going on. So he was using chaotic powers of the slard to disrupt what was going on. They were on the hunt for the Rod of Seven Parts, and the slard was working against the law and order of the Rod of Seven Parts, because slards are beings of chaos. So yeah, he was working against it. Another character was sort of working against it. Another character was working for it, unaware that the other two were working against it. It was very interesting. Hey Dubai, welcome to Bronze Dragon. Is it Dubai or DB? If you're a Palladium fan, that could be construed as dimensional being. Hey Minring, do you think there could have been good Oberiths in the old Oberith universe? Yeah, anything's possible. I always say that if it's a sapient species, then it's capable of being good or evil or neutral. And also I think that fixed alignment is a little bit hard-assed. Things quite often change alignment. So I think that you could further divide D&D up into your cultural alignment and your personal alignment. So your culture dictates that something is good or bad behavior. Giants are a perfect case in point of their culture dictates something is moral or ethical, not their personal opinion on something. And also their cultural concepts of good and evil differ quite a bit from humans. So giants have this strange, like, being strong and bullying somebody is seen as good behavior. Like, it's to not bully somebody would be seen as weird or dishonorable or disingenuous or weak behavior that doesn't serve giants and doesn't serve the giant gods. So you would be seen as shameful if you did not bully somebody. Kind of, that's a gross oversimplification of their rules of Morg and Mart. But yeah. Also, somebody pointed out that Mart is actually a ancient Egyptian word or something. Some such. D&D borrows stuff from everybody. Would I please check out Sutrunga Miniatures, Frost Goblins, and Seal Squigs? I could give it a go. Squigs are cool. What are the relations between the Sea Elves and the other types of elves? The Sea Elves were... they didn't come over from the Feywild as Sea Elves. They were actually a race of elves that descended into the sea and became Sea Elves. And I don't actually know if they were present for the original Seros Wars. So the Sea of Fallen Stars, or Seros, has its own history and stuff. And I think the Sea Elves came later. So it's interesting. Also, the Avariel, the Winged Elves, I'll be talking about them as well. Am I planning on doing a video on Changelings? I know that they're on Aberration, but I'd like to hear your take on them. Yep, they're basically the hidden kingdom. So it's not just Changelings, there's various other shape-shifting species that have a politics below the level of politics that you see on the surface world. Hey Mason. Mart is the Egyptian concept of the immortal souls that persist after death. Oh, okay. Well, that would explain it. Do you think that the Amaska Empire thought of itself as evil? No. I'd say that we have a better awareness of our evil these days on planet Earth and our impact on the environment and the fact that we are the spearhead of a new age of extinction. That's very self-aware for a civilization. But I don't think the societies on the planet of Toril were aware of what they were doing. For example, the Elven theory that the the weave is no longer uniform. There's areas of lacking in magical power, and there's some areas which are strong in magical power. Like the phase rest energy, for instance, is a concentration of magical power that takes away and weakens the weave in other areas of Toril. So some parts of Toril are almost a dearth of magic, and it's because of what the elves did with the sundering and things like that. They actually disrupted the feng shui of Toril. So the ley lines and stuff got smashed and disrupted. They no longer evenly distribute power across Faerun. Blame it on the dragons. Thanks, Axel. Hey, Adriana. Thanks. And the wolf elves, yep, they're around. I think they're a specific area of wolf elves, but I think they came over from the Feywild pretty much intact as well. Would I let a player play as a demi-lich? Look, all of the questions of would I let somebody do something, yeah, I would let players do anything, depending on the campaign, and that's my attitude for anybody else playing the game as well. You can play any sort of D&D you want, any sort of role-playing game you want. I'm never going to stand in the way of anybody else's right to play the game however they want to. And that's always been my policy. So if you ask me, is this okay or is that okay in D&D, I'll say, yep. The only real question is, if somebody's asking me a specific question about D&D lore and does this exist or does this not exist in the lore, is the only time I'll say no or yes, if you're asking me that specifically. But if you're saying can somebody play something, my answer will always be yes. You can do whatever you want. You can play D&D however you like, you know. The only difference would be, like, if you're playing an organized play. Does anybody play organized play anymore? Then you'll be bound by the restrictions on the whatever convention of play that you're playing, because it has to be uniform for everybody else to step between different games and not be completely weirded out by different lore in the games and stuff like that. So that's the only time when canon becomes kind of important. Is like if you're following a written adventure, then you have to sort of stick by that written adventure. If people are jumping between different games and expect it to be consistent, that's the only time when you have to sort of follow rules or restrictions, and those are ones that you agree to when you run those games. That's the whole point of running those games. But if it's your personal game with your friends in your house, you can play whatever you want. Nobody cares. Just do what you want. It's none of my business. I'm only here to inspire, you know. So I'll say, yeah. If you ask me, like, you know, what would happen if a dragon got polymorphed into a rabbit and bred true, and you had these rabbit dragons, you know, who could cast spells and fly and do all sorts of things, but they can never transform back into dragons again. And I'd give you inspiration and ideas about how that could roll out in a D&D world. I don't care. You know, it's not part of the game lore, but if you ask me questions about it, I'll sit and chew the fat about any concept in D&D. Why do we not have a player-sized aberration race? Well, you do. That's called the Mind Flayers. Also, the Gith and the Githyanki and Githzerai would not exist without the Mind Flayers. So they're an aberration-inspired race. And if you're playing a Githyanki or a Githzerai as a player character, you're going to be heavily involved with aberrations, because that's kind of core to their existence, is getting rid of them. The worst things the elves did. Hey, Mason. My favourite type of elves is probably the drow, because they've got an interesting backstory and history. And generally, when you're playing an elven, a drow elf character on the surface, you're dealing with a lot of cultural prejudice and things like that against you, and just people who don't know what you are. And that's very interesting. Also, I do quite often play moon elf half elves, who are just like, their elven ancestry is just a part of, you know, who they are and things, and it's in the background bubbling away, but they generally just get on with life. You know, they're used to dealing with other races, so that's if you're playing an elf, that's just like, I'm an elf, it's not a big deal. That's the moon elves. Gold elves are, the sun elves are very much, I'm an elf and it's a big deal. I'm superior to everyone. That's very much them. They kind of have a similar attitude to the giants. The giants trace their ancestry directly back to demigods and gods, right? So they think that they're all divine-blooded, and in many ways they are. So are the Gold Elves. The Gold Elves trace their ancestry back to the Eladrin and Fey Lords. So, my grandpappy 3 times removed was, a servant at the celestial gates of, the 7 heavens. Hey, Moodrink, thank you. What do I think about Frostfolk? I think they're kind of one-dimensional and a little bit boring. But if you're going to play a Frostfolk, for goodness sakes, you need to read about the Great Glacier and the gods and Ulutiu and all that sort of stuff, because they have a very distinct culture. You can kind of be excused for being a little bit removed from that, but you should realize that Frostfolk are very isolated. They speak their own language. They generally don't travel down to the south. Hey DeForest, have you ever heard of a mobile game called War Dragons? 5th time asking. I think, I don't know. If it's the one I'm thinking of, why? Why do you ask? I can tell you what games I'm playing on mobile at the moment. Let's see. I have been playing, what's it called? Valheim. Every now and then, but not as often as it probably deserves. Oops, I just lost the chat. Come back. There we are. And the other games I'm playing are, I've kind of gone off playing Gwent. I was playing Gwent for a while, and at the moment I'm playing Lost Crusade. Lost Crusade is Warhammer 40k campaign management. Building a base and doing raids and things like that. I'm in an alliance which is, I think, is Russian, and so I'm in a totally different time zone, and they don't interact with me at all. So, and they seem very inactive. So I'm just like in the area, stealing all their resources and fighting all the enemies and building up my base, and they do nothing, which is a bit sad. But that's what you get being a New Zealander. Elves are all British. Oh, no, they're not. Hey, thank you, Comic Nut. Happy Easter. Happy chocolate celebration. 2,000 years ago, a man rose from the dead so that you can eat chocolate. That's what Easter means to me. How would you make? I just said Moonring. I just said Moonring. The Frostfolk are more interesting if you pay attention to their culture. And come up with an interesting isolated culture for them. Like, for instance, the wildlings, wild folk from beyond the wall in Game of Thrones. That's Frostfolk, you could say. So imagine if they basically had the power of cold within them. Yeah, Rabbit Dragon. What would a Beholder hive ship invasion be like? Terrifying. Terrifying. You'd have these floating orbs coming from the sky, blasting away at everything. And then they'd probably proceed to blast away at each other as well. Hey, Dishonored Coward. Happy Fertility Day, my cute and fluffy humanoid friends. Yeah, well, it was originally the celebration of Ishtar. And we would have gone to the church/brothel. Man, religions used to be so cool. Thank you, Jason. Scottish and Australian. Hey, Zazek. Zazek, I've got to say that your comments on the videos this year so far have been solid gold. I've really enjoyed them. You consider all dwarves to be Russian. If you every now and then I'll sit down and I'll speak in the language of what I imagine the language of dwarves and elves and stuff sounds like. It's kind of interesting, and also goblinoid and stuff. I actually sat down and practiced speaking in different languages of Toril. When you think about it, beholders are just magical Daleks. There are Dalek type species in the Forgotten Realms. Can be. What was that comment, Dallas? It just got retracted. I almost saw it. Yugoloths are always Australian in my book. They're from the land down under and are the closest to real Aussies. You mercenaries and bastards. It's not a good look, Tyler, if you're an Australian being called a Yugoloth. Back when religion was more of your local culture, yeah, it was more like your local culture. Well, where I'm from, to show piety, we go to, if we're going to be fertility, then it involves the act of fertilizing. So, the church brothel, what a time to be alive. Yeah. Hey, I mean, Catholic girls, right? Am I right? I can say this because actually my parents are Catholics. So I guess I come from that culture myself. What artifacts would you consider safe for players, not campaign breaking? The apparatus of Qualish. Let's see. Figurines of wondrous power should be artifacts. Axe of the Dwarven Lords. That throne thing. Boy, it's been a while since I've done a magic item video, isn't it? Where my book at? Let's see. Artifacts of the Guild. And where's my artifacts book? What's this one? Oh, Dragon's Lancer. It's starting to come right. It got delivered with a massive dent in it, like somebody drove a forklift over this book. You can see it's just starting to come right, but it's still bent as. I've given up with the reprints and from the DM's Guild. Where has my artifacts book gone? Where are you? No. I've lost you. I've really got to organise my bookshelf. It's shameful. Every single time I'm on stream, somebody asks me about a book and I just lose it. Deep Magic's probably got some. Oops. I don't know. Relics and Rituals has probably got some. That's from Sword and Sorcery though. I'll find it later. Sitting around somewhere. The Well of Worlds from 3rd edition. Not the Wand of August. Magic Rings, yeah. Beholders are good Dalek stand-ins, yeah. Sword of Cass. Laird of the Blings. Yeah, I should make a book catalogue. It's true, Adrianeth. It's a bendy book, yeah. Yeah, so Jason, that drive-through RPG and the DMs Guild prints books on demand and then sends them off to you from England. But the problem is that they send them as if they're sending them just like next door. So they send them basically wrapped in a cardboard cover. The problem is when they ship them all the way to New Zealand via air travel and shipping container, they get mangled and they get wet and they get trodden on and they get handed off between local courier vans and things like that, and they eventually get tossed in my backyard, and they invariably end up arriving pretty mangled. And I've said to them, look, just for the love of God, wrap them in some plastic. Like, these things are going to get pissed on by polar bears, that you're going to get savagely mauled. Like, imagine that they're getting stuck on the back of a sled dog team and taken across Alaska to get somewhere. This is the level of damage that the mail gets through, and it's just, they just won't. So I'm like, well, that's great that you're so environmentally, conscious and all, but think about when your books arrive damaged and I have to reorder them, and you've got this policy of replacement for any damage. So the whole shipping process that happens over again, well, that's damaging the environment even more because of all the fuel and stuff expense and manufacturing something, and it's so annoying. So I've just given up. So when I order books from the DMs Guild, they're just going to arrive damaged, and that's the way it is. So yeah, not a fan, I could say. Hey Mark, you're a fan of Deep Magic, seems really extra. Well, yeah. Numenera is awesome. Yeah, oh boy. I've got the Numenera 5th edition Arcana of the Ancients book. Oh, there it is. There's the Book of Artifacts. That makes sense. Of course it was sitting next to the Numenera books. Okay, Book of Artifacts and Arcana of the Ancients. Perfect combo for making some new artifacts. Because this has got all sorts of, like, weird cybernetics and stuff. So if you wanted to include like lightsabers, like that is a lightsaber. If you wanted to have lightsabers and temporal time bombs and look at that, and a littered helmet gives you psychic powers. All sorts of really cool stuff in this book. I cannot recommend this enough to people who like weird D&D. So, Deep Magic, Arcana of the Ancients. Good combo. Also, if you wanted to make actual Daleks, Arcana of the Ancients is good for that too. Head of Vecna. Tuna can opener. Hey Dragon. Didn't Spelljammer have a planet full of Tarrasques? Yeah. Oh, Horizon Zero Dawn. I played that game. Gave you a lot of inspiration for Numenera. Yeah, Numenera is like a post-apocalyptic world. So you can dig up all sorts of, like, as much as Forgotten Realms has got a lot of lost cultures and stuff that we're more aware of, Numenera has got lost cultures that we're told nothing of, really. So it's like, this is the era where a great empire arose that used crystal prisms and things to do all this stuff. And there's hologram ghosts wandering around from this empire, but we don't know who they were. Were they humans? They could have been, DeForest, what would you do if fantasy and or sci-fi invaded our world? Good grief, man, that's very hard to read. Are you using speech to text, and why? What's with all the emojis? Your emojis get like caught up in the system as spam. That's essentially what I do. Like, magic and technology are the same. Magic is technology is just another type of magic in D&D when you think about it. Moonring. Any Ixachitl's artifacts? No, not as far as I know, but I'm open to suggestions. Are you still going to do video on the Doodans? That doesn't ring a bell. Did you spell that correctly? Rexy, do I personally think that Wizards of the Coast will remake Spelljammer for 5th edition? If so, do you think they will make many changes? I think they've already included elements of Spelljammer. There's probably as many elements as we need of Spelljammer, and all the rest of it can be taken from the original books and just converted. I would like to see them do like some supplements and stuff. They gave us the GIF, for instance. So, like, if you're gonna put the GIF in the game, then you might as well go the whole hog and do the rest of Spelljammer, because that's like, well, you know, where did the GIF come from? Come on. So they obviously have. If they've got the GIF packaged and put into a book for us, then they obviously have a lot of Spelljammer stuff that they've been working on in the background. So I think it's. And this is the thing that pisses me off, is that they just don't tell us what they're working on. It's like, why do you have this obsession with cloak and dagger bullshit? Just like, be open and honest with us. We gave you an open and honest opinion about what the game should be, and when you give us these unearthed arcana things, like, we're assuming you're doing it to give us like a chance to give you feedback on what should and should not be popular in the what is going to be and is not going to be popular in the game. Are you actually paying attention to that, or are you so obsessed with your agenda for changing around the law to be, you know, more socially acceptable, that you're just ignoring what the feedback is? That's what I want to know. Because Wizards of the Coast seems very much to be targeting a certain type of market which aren't actually buying the books, to the detriment of the game. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in the back rooms of D&D, because it's a closed book. So that's really why I don't really want to have anything to do with Wizards of the Coast at the moment. I'm more interested in, you know, existing lore and converting it and giving people what they actually want. Like, if you ask me about Spelljammer stuff, I'll make videos about Spelljammer stuff. Less interested in Eberron, because I've never really gelled with Eberron, and also the one time that I did make a video about Eberron, I got roasted by people in the comments section because I wasn't talking about the Eberron of the edition that they preferred. And so that's exactly the sort of toxic attitude that I absolutely hate in the fandom of D&D, and Eberron is absolutely rife with it, or I seem to cop the worst of it. So I was just like, well, okay, you don't want me making videos about Eberron, I won't make videos about Eberron, because I don't particularly care about it anyway. Jason, thank you. How would you include Large Luigi in a Spelljammer campaign? I think he's a really interesting character that no one talks about. Yeah, because he's probably a little bit obscure. I haven't actually encountered Large Luigi, so I don't know what you're talking about yet. I'm yet to come across him. Athasian dragons are super interesting. Yep. Demodans, yep, we are different species. The tail sting that killed Steve Irwin should be an artifact. Oh, Mark, sassy today, man. One of the lore bits of Numenera core book is about the squid and human interactions, with the squids basically going, oh, you people are back, and just perfectly encapsulate the setting, I think. Yeah. Yeah, they're like, oh, humans, what? Yeah, it's like, oh, you're a dinosaur? What are you doing here? DeForest, have you ever heard of Kill Hill? He has a channel on YouTube. Not yet. You currently only wear 3 things. An enchanted satchel, the magic of I don't understand, my mom gave me when I was a wormling, and a pair of enchanted gauntlets crafted recently for parrying strikes. What's the other thing? That's 2. Hey, Adrena, thank you. The latter, definitely the latter. You'd like to see them remake the Council of Worms. Why? Why? You've got it right there. Just convert it yourself. Why the obsession with converting old stuff? We can easily do it ourselves. Make new stuff. I want to see more Magic the Gathering worlds. I want to see Dominaria as the world setting for 6th edition D&D. There, I said it. Screw you. Have I ever played Scion? No, but I've heard about it. I would say that Wizards of the Coast has definitely gone a certain route in their marketing and production of stuff. Like, they're obviously not that interested in keeping every book on topic. Like, there's a lot of scatter in the D&D 5th edition books. So if you want to learn about like all the spells that your druid can get, it's not all in the core book. You've also got to go to like Volo's and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. So you end up flipping through 3 books at the table. Magic items, that sort of thing, feats and stuff. So it's very much like 3.5 edition. You did not learn the lessons of 3.5 edition, where you've got feats scattered across multiple different books. And eventually, I think we haven't... The fat lady will sing, the death knell of 5th edition, and quote me on this, will be when we see a compendium of rules for 5th edition. When we get a compendium book, they will already be working on 6th edition in the background. If the history of D&D tells us anything, when the compendium comes along and collects all the lore, that's the end of that edition. That's it. Should you buy the compendium then, if you're a person like me that moves on to the next edition every time? No. Candlekeep book was so meh. Yeah. I've had a look at it, and I find the adventures in there quite interesting. And like, I've got a vested interest in Candlekeep, so new stuff. Oh, Gino, that's a good question. Dice towers, yay or nay for you? Depends on the circumstances. If I'm at a convention game and I've got like this much space on the table for me, I could see a dice tower being useful. But otherwise, no, I've never seen a lot of point of dice towers. In my personal games, I haven't seen anybody using dice towers. But I mean, they're cool and everything. Tabletop crafters in particular like making dice towers, just because it's another thing that they can make. East Asian dragons are just giant friendly ferrets. Well, the Dishonored Coward, everybody styles himself as a dragon. Hey AJ, how was the time? What? The time shift? Fine. Daylight savings, I barely even noticed this year actually. It's a lot different if you don't have to like go to an office job or a laboratory in my case. Are you Kick-ass, are you planning on upgrading from 720 to 1080 resolution one day? There's 2 reasons why I do 720 and not 1080. I could do 1080, but it doesn't actually make any difference for the resolution of the artwork and stuff that I use most of the time. Quite often the artwork will be in, like, I'll have a bit of artwork which is like this big, and then the next bit of artwork that I find will be from an older edition and stuff, and it's only a grainy little pixelated image this big that I can find on the internet. So with 720 resolution, it kind of dumbs down the resolution of the big pictures and upgrades the resolution of the small pictures to kind of blend it together a little bit. Also, it is less of a data load on people who are streaming and watching my videos, so it actually costs them less money, bits and data worth. Like, it doesn't take on much of a load compared to like you're watching streaming 4K video and stuff, which actually, there's only so much data which can move around the world. And so yeah, it's kind of like I'm environmentally aware of the data streams that I'm putting out, if that makes any difference. It's like people aren't aware of the fact that there's only so much data that spins around the place, and I'm actually environmentally conscious on the datascape. So I'm like using recyclable plastic when nobody's ever aware of the fact that it's actually a thing. Okay, future generations will applaud me, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm actually putting out less data intensive stuff so that your phone can load it quicker and things like that. 1080p wouldn't actually make a huge difference, and it also makes a huge difference for the amount of time it takes me to process the videos. So I set the video to process and correlate and stuff, then upload it to YouTube. The uploading process is actually fairly quick, thanks to my internet connection. But yeah, data awareness is a thing. Thank you, Green Scythe. I thought I was speaking nonsense there for a second, but that's okay. A dragon doing a ferret war dance. I need this in my life. Yep. D&D. There is a need in Dungeons and Dragons for comedy and cuteness. Okay. These are two elements that Dungeons and Dragons has always had, and there's also like innuendo, double entendres, adult humor also has a place in Dungeons and Dragons. And if you don't have a game where you're like laughing at least once or twice per session, what the hell is the point? What is wrong with you? People who take D&D really, really seriously, I can't wrap my head around it. Moonring, yep, I'm going to be doing more Spelljammer for sure. Yeah, Mark, yeah, I'm catching your sassy. It's true. The longer the stream goes on, the more sassy I get. Yeah, crashed. A module centered around a crashed starship and full of aliens and tech. Yep. You've never heard of Expedition to the Barrier Peaks? Huh. Ferrets are a good thing, not if you're a burrowing animal or a bird. Brian, I agree with you. Things will inevitably spread out through the books as time goes on, as they want to make more things for existing classes, so that means things spread out. What if though, they just held off on publishing them and making money from them, and basically presented them as online resources? So D&D Beyond, like they rely far more on D&D Beyond, which actually I don't think is owned by Wizards of the Coast, right? So if Wizards of the Coast didn't drop the ball in 5th edition and went with a contractor who basically just went, I'm going to do D&D stuff my way, and Wizards of the Coast went, what? You're supposed to be doing this and this and this. And then they had this big conflict which basically kiboshed and shut down all of their plans for their wondrous plans for like character builders and stuff like that they had promised us at the very start of 5th edition, which just didn't eventuate for years. It took them years to get their shit together. And then eventually D&D Beyond basically took all that over and took it all on board, which meant that Wizards of the Coast was joined at the hip to Twitch, which means that the YouTube creators basically got kicked to the curb. And you can highlight exactly what that means by the community events that they had last year, where they didn't involve any YouTubers at all. They basically made their own studio and tried doing it themselves, and made a real shit job of it, if the testament to itself. I seem a little bit overly harsh and critical of Wizards of the Coast, because I do like point out their glaring flaws, because I'm not associated with Wizards of the Coast. I'm not on their payroll, so I can just say it like it is. I'm a fan of the thing. I'm not an employee of Wizards of the Coast. So yeah, my opinion is my own, which means they'll probably never work with me, but that's okay. I don't necessarily want to work with them. Not in the current way that they treat contractors and writers. So I'm not really interested in it. I'm doing fine independently. But yeah, so things get spread out through books. But imagine if they weren't put into books until they were basically a part of the game. Like they would have all their resources online. Like at the moment, you can buy all the books online, and you can buy the physical copies as well. And there's no like discount if you bought one or the other. Like if you bought a physical book, you can put in the barcode of the book into your online resources and unlock your PDF version basically of it. I mean, that would make sense, right? No, they make you pay for both. But what if, before they ever put it into print, they determined what was popular by seeing the actual data of people traveling to it and using it every day, correlate that with what is actually the living game and should go into a print record, and put together a book which has got all these classes and things like that and expansions, so that you could actually have an Unearthed Arcana book for 5th edition that includes all of the extra classes and things like that they've refined and determined are the best and most popular ones from online play. Oh, that's so nice, Azek. I think you fully deserve your data footprint. Oh, thank you. Maybe do a poll to see if enough of us would be up for 1080 live streams. Oh, live streams? I don't think I have any control over the resolution of live streams. I'm just talking about my my usual stuff. As far as I know. It's almost time for me to head off, people. Oh, that's a good question, Truth Begets Heresy. Okay. You're asking me, hey AJ, what company do you think is more toxic? Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro, or Games Workshop / Citadel Miniatures? Oh. Okay. I think that both of them have got problems. I think Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are more disingenuous about what their actual social agenda is. Like they'll pay lip service and stuff to inclusion and things like that. Whereas Games Workshop and Citadel Miniatures is mainly a boys' club because it's just like it's war games. It's toy soldiers on tables essentially. But there's no real barriers in that hobby, I guess you could say. That I've ever encountered to it being open to everybody to play. Their pricing and stuff is kind of mercenary, and their paints have always been overpriced and not necessarily the best. The miniatures are also way fucking overpriced, like seriously overpriced for little bits of plastic. Come on, they're massively overpriced. I can understand, like, you know, if they went, there's no reason why Wizards of the Coast couldn't go like a Bones Miniatures thing and just do Kickstarter runs for print molds and things like that. I'm sure that would be very popular. But no, they do their pricing structure for the miniatures to be just extremely expensive. And so, like, you know, they're not collectible cards. There's not limited runs of any particular miniature that they produce. So there's no reason other than just sheer greed why they're so expensive. And like, it actually prohibits the hobby from growing any more than it does. So yeah, their sales would increase if the miniatures were cheaper. and the company would actually grow if the miniatures were cheaper, but they've never seemed to get this through their head. And I guess they're locked into it now, because if they suddenly did make all the miniatures cheaper, then all the people who have been paying through the nose for miniatures all these years would suddenly realise that they've been duped and be justifiably wildly angry. Wizards of the Coast has got its problems, though. I think they're more cultural than they are mercantile. So, yeah. And that basically comes down to this cloak and dagger bullshit and these their actions not lining up with their attitude. Like, yeah. There seems to be a lot of Wizards of the Coast makes a song and dance about being inclusive and all that sort of stuff, but in actual fact, in their actual deeds, they're not. So yeah, that's something that they need to address personally and do some deep navel gazing and as far as that's concerned. And I think the problem there is that they're now overly dominated by a corporate structure, and the corporate structure means that you've got executives who are basically their only objective is to make money, and ethics and morals play no part in that. It's only lip service. If ethics and morals serve their profit margin, then they'll pay lip service to it. But in other words, but if it doesn't profit them to be ethical or moral, they won't be. That's corporate for you. Hey Donald, Trogdor! I'm glad everybody enjoyed the Trogdor video. I enjoyed making that. Nostalgia, man. Kick-ass! My players themed their PCs after 90s rappers. The Surge Knight, the Goatface Killer, Satyr, and the RZA way of the Iron Hand Monk. Lol. I need names for NPCs. Yeah. Biggie could be the name of the Minotaur. Yeah, $100 for a box of cheap plastic. No, thank you. That you got to paint it yourself. Good grief. It's like Knowles' miniatures. It's like, no thanks. I don't want to pay for like lumps of plastic. I want pre-painted miniatures. If we can do it, why would you not? Could a Mercury Dragon use their Quicksilver form to attack others in a Evan's Black Tentacles style? Yeah, I think so, Donald. I don't see why not. D&D did start and grow from a mini wargame. Yeah, I mean, Wizards of the Coast is a latter incarnation. Like, originally TSR, by the way, Wizards of the Coast have just surpassed TSR for the amount of time that they've been in control of D&D. So Wizards of the Coast has now been D&D longer than TSR had been D&D. Isn't that mind-blowing? So originally, the Citadel guys, the Games Workshop, were the UK arm of Dungeons and Dragons. And what happened was Gary Gygax essentially said, okay, we're going to go with somebody else producing the miniatures for the game. And Games Workshop, who had geared themselves up completely to do the miniature production and stuff, went, what? Like, we had an agreement that we would do the miniatures and stuff for this. And Gary Gygax went, no, we're going with somebody else. Or maybe it was the Bloom brothers. I don't know. I wasn't there. And so the Games Workshop split off from D&D and started doing Warhammer Fantasy, and then Warhammer 40k came along as a sci-fi version of that. So that's, they wouldn't exist without Dungeons and Dragons. It's plain and simple. They would not exist. Warhammer 40k would not exist if Gary Gygax hadn't been a bit of a dick. So thanks, Gary. Awesome. I'm glad that Warhammer 40k exists, so I'm fine with this. But I think, wouldn't it be awesome if Hasbro bought Warhammer 40k and we had an actual official crossover between Warhammer 40k and D&D? 6th edition for the Emperor. Anyway. Oh, that's a good question, Dragon. Why is there such a focus on game balance in the community? It's almost at anal levels. It's always been like that, and it's always really frustrating because it's nonsense. Nonsense. I think the perfect example of how that is illogical in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. You can't have a perfectly balanced game and have a game world of Dungeons and Dragons that makes sense. And I point you at 4th edition as the perfect example of why this is so. In 4th edition, at lower levels of play, you have lower level kobolds. Then at higher levels of play, if you want to keep the kobolds involved and have them relevant in the game and not just killed by a high level character glancing at them forcibly, you need different higher category kobolds. But the problem is, if you integrate those higher category kobolds into kobold society and the world, at lower levels of play, they can't exist. Because if they do, then they'll throw the game out of balance because you've got two high level kobolds in the gameplay. So where are they? So when you're a low level character, where are the dragons? Where are the Tarrasques? Where are the beholders? They don't exist. There's an abundance of giant rats and spiders and vermin and stuff and cellars and things that you have to deal with. But where are they at high levels of play? They're just in the background, you know. So the question of balance becomes like, why doesn't your character just get like its face ripped off as soon as it walks out the door if there's such high level threats lying around? So kind of you do this little logical leap of like, well, okay, they've got the big bad things have got to be off in the wilderness somewhere. So my character actually has to go looking for them. But in modern play, characters don't just go, hey, look, a dungeon, let's go. They've got to have some motivation to go there. So that's very much a modern player thing. It's like, well, why would my character do that? Like, why would my character risk his life to go into that dungeon? It's like, well, to get wealth and stuff and to become a lord and to build a castle. And like, so his children and their children could go on to like rule the land and make it better. That's how civilization grows. It's just like, yeah. TSA still did it better. Did it pretty much the same. Plastic addiction is Warhammer and cardboard obsession is Magic the Gathering. Fully agree. No, Malphazar, I've not heard of that. Hey, thanks, Tyler. Alright, everybody. Time for me to toddle off. It's been an interesting chat today. Lots of contentious issues. Dungeoneering for the loot! Yeah. Would you play a Space Marine who are actually Azamar in the setting, or Paladin in Dungeons and Dragons 40k 7th edition? yeah, I totally would. Like, I mean, I've got Deathwatch, right, as somewhere. I think I've actually got the book out in the... I've got more books elsewhere. So yeah, I would absolutely have Space Marines. Easy recipe for balance. If I can do it, so can the enemy. For sure. Alright, everybody. I'm back to reading more lore on elves and writing elven stuff. That is pretty much going to be 100% of my focus this week. And I'm fine with this. Deathwatch for the win. Okay. Signing off, everyone. Oops, that was the wrong button.